This is not a phone. It's my bank account, my mailbox, my to-do list, my therapist, my social life, my main source of inspiration, where I get my news, my movie theater, my iPod, and occasionally my job. And every time the internet starts to feel just a little bit bad, the solution is apparently to just get rid of it. And that just feels a little bit like telling someone that they should break up with their partner just because they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed lately, which I've never done before. Anyway. So last year, I decided to take a break from the internet, and when I came back, everything was exactly the same, except infinitely worse. There was more AI slop, more discourse about AI slop, more people telling you that the solution was to just log off and start filling a notebook with trash or buy a record player that you're never gonna use. Free run record's kind of cool though. And lately I feel like I am genuinely going insane because so many of the people leading this anti-internet discourse are still clearly very chronically online. It just seems like everyone wants to repackage this issue in a way that is algorithmically kosher, for lack of a better term, either by commodifying it or romanticizing it or turning it into some kind of core or trend. And I do genuinely believe that these trends are coming from a good place, from people wanting to find solutions, to feel something again, to navigate their way through the mess that is 2026. But I feel like we may have lost the plot a little bit. And I think the reason why so many of these solutions aren't really working out long term is because we're not really addressing the core issue. Unless you've been living under a rock for like the last 3 years, I'm sure you've heard the term social media addiction, but I don't know if addiction is quite the right word to describe what's happening and what we're feeling. And in fact, there actually is a lot of ongoing research right now about whether or not addiction is a term that can be applied from like a scientific perspective. And there was an interesting article I read recently called Dumb Phone Owners Have Lost Their Minds. Great title, by the way. It's an interesting article. Recommend you go read it. But the author said something that really made something click in my brain, which was that I'm not addicted to my phone, I am my phone. She then goes on to say that our relationship to our phones is more akin to enmeshment than addiction. And enmeshment is just this idea that boundaries can start to blur to the point where something starts performing too many jobs at once. So for example, emotional regulation, work, stimulation, identity, validation, and oh, hey, would you look at that? A small portable object that doesn't have any defined roles and you can always have in your pocket available to you. That can be dangerous, right? So this distinction matters because enmeshment and addiction are solved in completely different ways. And I think the term enmeshment has really captured a lot of the frustrations I've had lately with technology, where it's like we're so focused on getting rid of our phones and managing our screen times that we're not really addressing this new reality. We are at a point where the internet and tech in general cannot be completely disregarded from your life without introducing a serious handicap. And I'm not politically educated enough to go into the whole class debate. There's definitely a big can of worms that we can open with this, but we're gonna put that aside for now. Needless to say, any attempt to solve this problem without acknowledging that new reality is never going to be a complete solution. And this idea isn't new. There's something called the extended mind hypothesis. I'll put a link or something here that you can read more about. I'll try to link everything below if there's articles and videos that I mention. But the point of why I'm bringing all this up is because it really wasn't until I accepted that my phone was going to be something that I have to work with and not against, that things finally started to click for me. Now, when you become overly dependent on a romantic partner, what do you do to fix the relationship? You quit, duh. Just kidding. I actually went to therapy and learned that that response is actually a maladaptive coping mechanism for avoidant attachment, and what you actually should do is communicate your boundaries.
Nani?
Being an adult is so fun. All right, so healthy boundaries. How do we set those? This is a skill that you should probably learn for all parts of your life, but I'll put a lid on that for now. Now, when it comes to my phone and the internet, I like to think about boundaries on 5 different levels. The first one, which is the most obvious, probably the easiest to do if you can get the hang of it, is to just literally set physical boundaries. So I started doing this a couple years ago and it absolutely changed my life. I have a very hard, strict rule that I do not touch my phone when I wake up in the morning. I'm not someone who gets out of bed really easy. I will be very groggy. I want to just like, you know, stay in my cozy comforter and cuddle with my many stuffed animals. And if I have something that can kind of slowly wake me up and keep me entertained, you know, like this type of shaped thing, then I will probably stay in there forever. It does something to your brain. I'm not going to get into the scientific parts of all of this because that is like a whole nother rabbit hole with like dopamine and blah, 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 blah. But it really does affect your motivation and the way you show up to literally everything else during the rest of your day. Take anything away from this video, it's don't touch your phone until you get out of bed, ideally maybe an hour until you started your day. One thing I really love doing is in the morning, I like to use this app, Forest. You can block everything on your phone if you just start growing like one of these little plants. I'm gonna cancel it because I don't want a dead plant on there. The reason I really like using this in the morning is because I don't have any willpower. And once that's started, I can't do anything with my phone anyway. The other thing I am very strict about is keeping my phone on Do Not Disturb if I am working during the day. I actually have my phone on Do Not Disturb most of the time, like socializing, relaxing. Don't expect an immediate response from me ever. I think that really helps kind of keep you in the present moment and you're not getting distracted by something and then, you know, an hour later you found out you're going down a rabbit hole and you're supposed to be doing something else. So not that that's ever happened to you or me, but in case it does, I think this is a good rule to implement. And one thing that I don't always do this, but you can try to set a kind of soft rule that if you have like a couple minutes, maybe up to 5 minutes of downtime, you know, you're in line somewhere, try not to use your phone. I think that's a really good way to help break that compulsive cycle of needing it to fill time. It's just good to train your brain that you don't always have to fill up time when it's there. Riveting, I know. Now, number 2 is defining roles. If you remember earlier, I mentioned that a lot of enmeshment comes from having too many jobs at once and blurring boundaries. So this is literally defining ahead of time what jobs do you want your phone to play in your life and what jobs do you not want them to play. So some examples that are personal to me, I'm not saying you have to do these, but I don't like to go on short form. I don't consume any type of short form content, not Reels, not TikTok, not shorts. I literally can't even remember what they're called. And it's not that I think that shorts are like this evil force in the world, although kind of, but it's mostly just because I am a creator and I do long form content. And there have been many times where I will be scrolling, I see something cool, it sends me down this shiny object syndrome FOMO path, and suddenly I find myself thinking that I need to create more on Instagram or create more TikTok. And that's just not like a good headspace for me to be in. I find it very reactive. So that's why I try to just stay off of those altogether. And the hard line I have for myself with Instagram is that I do have an account. I still use DMs, I still post stories, I use it for connecting with people, but it's just not meant to be a main source of inspiration because again, that can snowball very quickly and I just don't want to deal with that. TikTok is just completely nuked entirely. I don't even have the app. And then another example, very personal to me, if you have been on my channel at all, if you came here from my Notion video, then you know I've had a very long, toxic, difficult relationship with Notion and like productivity tech in general. For the last year, when I was on my monastic sabbatical, whatever you want to call it, I decided to only use paper and pen. I did not want to use digital tools, and that was fine. I definitely understand the pros to that, but I think it was hard for me not to have a single home base, and as much as I have tried to get away from Notion, that still remains the best place to do that. So I have gone back to it. I'm still working on how to use it in like a more healthy way, but some of the lines I've drawn for myself are that number 1, I don't look for inspiration. I don't look to other creators or on Reddit to find ways that I can like redo my dashboard unless there's something specific I'm trying to solve for. And number 2, I no longer delude myself into believing that organizing things in Notion and making them prettier is a form of being productive. I now associate it with being a hobby and something I enjoy in my downtime, but if I have work I have to do, I can't say that I'm gonna procrastinate on that work because I have to clean up this database because I can't do work until I do that. I've moved past that. Now, number 3 is to define what is enough. And all of these are really things that you can kind of apply to all life, not just your phone. But I think it took many years of deprogramming myself from toxic productivity content to finally learn that endless optimization is a form of boundary erosion. And what I mean by that is if you're someone who always wants to try and squeeze in a little bit of content, like one TikTok video or like a podcast when you're going on a walk, going to run errands, and you're only doing that because you want to fill time and to be more efficient with your time, then you're not actually intentional about why you're doing it. I heard someone say once that contentment is resistance, and that's really stuck with me because we're put in this hamster wheel all the time of feeling like we need to have more and that we can't ever be satisfied with what we have right now. That is part of what drives this addiction or enmeshment, whatever you want to call it, with social media and with content specifically. And even as a creator, I find that trying to like view max all of my videos is not really a good goal, you know, unless you're Mr. Beast, which obviously that comes with its own set of issues. But I think if you're going to create stuff online, you also have to have these very specific milestones that you're after where you can define what is enough in terms of salary, in terms of impact, in terms of your general fulfillment, because you can always keep doing more and more. You can always keep optimizing, but optimization should not be a goal. Optimization is in service of whatever your goal is. Number 4, if you are a chronically online person, you've probably heard this term already, but it is to be your own algorithm, which is to just decide what you pay attention to for yourself. Don't let anyone else decide that for you. And there's a lot of ways you can go about this, but what it really comes down to is just being intentional and being willing to put in the work to seek out creators, curators, media whose tastes you trust and that you know is curated based on values that are personal and important to them. And not just putting your blind faith into an algorithm and a machine whose primary objective is to sell you things. This could be as simple as just subscribing to newsletters or Patreons of people that you really admire and like their work. It could be creating a database of interesting videos and content you come across, or you could literally just ask a group chat, what's their new favorite read? Who are they watching right now? And take their opinions because they're your friends and you know that you guys like the same things. And last but not least, we have output. A big part of being your own algorithm is actively engaging with the content you consume, because the way you react to things, your thoughts and ideas about it, the things you agree with, the things you like, the things you don't like, that is helping to actively curate your taste and point you to the next things that you should be consuming. And this is how you become your own like TikTok algorithm that knows you super well and can just like deliver information to you at a pace where you're like, oh, this is amazing and this is also amazing. But first, you really have to be able to understand what it is that you want more of. And output is really important just because it enforces critical thinking, which is something that we need a lot more of. And bonus points if you share that critical thinking with others. But I just want to be clear that this does not mean that you have to create content, share things with a camera. There's a lot of ways to do this that are completely private or just sharing within your own circles. Number 1, the easiest is to just create a media journal, a commonplace book. If you don't know what those things are, just Google it, ask our Lord and Savior, ChatGPT. It's pretty simple. It's just write notes about things that you come across. Yeah, that's it. I guess you don't need to Google it. It could be as small as a little zine that you print out at home and share the things that you recently learned and you send it to a couple of your friends. Or you could always create your own digital garden, get really nerdy about PKM, which is also something that I will probably make a video about in the future. But I personally found that it has been a great way for me to just collect, synthesize, understand everything that I have been learning, connect different ideas, and, you know, be able to create stuff like this. All right, if you made it this far, give yourself a big pat on the back because you just did something that very few are able to do in this day and age, which is to sit through something for more than 30 seconds without clicking off. The future is bright. Anyway, that marks the end of my 3-part series about burnout and social media and everything that I've been thinking during my time off. I probably will be talking about this for years to come, so if you're tired of it, I'm sorry. There's probably going to be more. But if you want to know more about the background and the context and see parts 1 and 2, I will make sure to link it down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.